High Level is a full CRM and marketing platform, and I've used some of the best in the SaaS industry. And I'm off mute, and we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and Facebook. It's Revening's Wednesday. Welcome to Revening's Wednesday, Revenue Party people. We have some hot topics and we have some hot guests. So we're going to be getting right into it. But before we do, you know I have to remind you to delegate. I have to remind myself to delegate sometimes. But yeah, I've been working with Cherry Assistant from the beginning. And Cherry Assistant is a VA placement company. So they have been helping me find talent across the globe that has been able to help me scale. Now, they help me find producers, video editors. Now I have an EA, but you might need something else. You might need, a bookkeeper or something. So scan that QR code right there. Or if you're listening on podcast, just go to cherryassistant.com. Fill out their form, let them know that you heard about them through WinsDay for $250 off your first month. So I definitely suggest getting a virtual assistant and getting some help. I'd love to hear from the folks in the comments. Like, first of all, where are you all tuning in from? And do you have a VA? Have you ever wanted a VA? If you just dreamed a little bit, what would you get a VA for? Put it in the comments. We want to hear from you. But then also I want to tell you about High Level. So for us here in-house, it's app.reveting.com, but really we just put lipstick on High Level and we white labeled it. So it's a full service like CRM and marketing automation platform. Then when we get clients who sign up, which our clients, we help businesses go live on LinkedIn like we're doing here and turn it into podcast and other content. So we're able to give each of those clients their own CRM and marketing automation platform because High Level is an agency CRM and marketing automation platform. So not only do I have an account, but all my clients have an account. And I started using High Level when I first started business 3 years ago because let's just be honest, like I couldn't afford HubSpot. And, I was just shopping around and High Level was only $97 a month. And when you get an entry-level account, you get 3 accounts with that. So I had an account, I had a sandbox where I could test and play, and then I had another account for my client. And of course, we've just continued to grow and add more sub-accounts. So I definitely suggest checking out High Level if you haven't yet. And if you are listening on podcast, just go to reveting.com/high level to get a 30-day trial on my affiliate link. But yeah, let's get right into our episode because we have a really great episode planned and some amazing guests. So welcome to the show. We've got Dr. Christopher Croner and Colleen. I should have asked you how to say your last name in the intro. I'm sorry. How do I pronounce that?
It's Gepfert.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, and thank you both for being here. And as we talked about a little bit during pre-show, we want to hear your full life story from birth to what brought you to now in 2 minutes. What do you think, Dr. Croner? Can you kick us off?
I think I can beat that timing. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, Jesse. I appreciate it and look forward to being of service to you and your audience. So in 2 minutes, I was born in Hammond, Indiana, Hammond Hospital, grew up in St. John, Indiana, town in Northwest Indiana. Went to DePaul University as an undergrad. Went to Southern Illinois at Carbondale for my master's and Ph.D. Specialized thereafter in delivering psychological consultation services to business management. Started a firm called Whitmer & Associates that specializes in executive assessment in 2002. Began the work that I do now in terms of identifying the characteristics of high-performing salespeople at that time. Began that research then, formed SalesDrive in 2005. Since then, we've worked with over 1,500 companies around the world, administered over 150,000 assessments. Interesting things about me that I've done in the interim, I've taken classes at Second City in Chicago, graduated from their Intro to Improv program. So it's always helpful in situations like this. And I got to be an extra in The Dark Knight. So there you go.
So cool. I love that. Wait, so you took classes at Second City?
I did indeed.
Wow, that's really big.
In both improv and comedy writing. So on the improv side, I wanted to improve in terms of doing presentations. You know, you stand up with a PowerPoint, anybody can do that. But not everybody can stand up in front of a screen and be able to take random questions from the audience where you don't know what's going to happen or where they're coming from. And in the final show that our class did, they just put me out on stage, in a stage I'd never been at before, and said, okay, when the lights crescendo, start. And yeah, if you can do that, if you're going to probably handle anything.
Okay, audience, let's put them to test. Let's ask a whole bunch of questions and put them on the spot. We want to see this Second City skill in action. So in the meantime, Colleen, we'd love to hear your full life story as well. Thank you, Dr. Croner, for sharing. That was really amazing. Colleen, in 2 minutes, can we learn a little bit about you?
Yes, I probably can also beat the 2-minute deadline there, but thank you for having me, Jesse. I'm excited to be here. So I grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut. I went to the University of Colorado, go Buffaloes. I actually started my career in finance as an analyst working at Lehman Brothers. So fun fact about me, I was there until Lehman Brothers collapsed, which forced a reset for me. So I moved into marketing because I realized I care more about understanding people, why they buy, how they decide, and what creates trust. Since then, I've spent my career building demand gen engines for B2B SaaS and cybersecurity companies. I am very much drawn to structure and clarity, especially in high growth environments where it's easy for teams to lose the plot. And that ultimately led me to Build Without Chaos, where I focus on go-to-market clarity and calm leadership. So now, today, I'm a growth and demand gen executive. So I build demand gen engines for B2B SaaS and cybersecurity companies with a focus on clarity, alignment, and predictable outcome. And I host Build Without Chaos, which is a podcast on go-to-market clarity and calm leadership.
And we get to hear about a little bit of that clarity today. So I'm excited about that. So thank you for sharing that, Colleen. So you grew up on the East Coast. Now you're on the West Coast. Yes. How long have you been on the West Coast?
6 months.
Oh, wow.
So I moved in the middle of July from New York City. Oh, yeah. So this is my first warm winter, in air quotes. So
warm winter.
We'll see. It's already 45 degrees and it feels super cold, but it's way better than the 15-degree winters in New York City. That's for sure.
Totally. Well, you didn't get to really adapt to it, like when you're here and you're like in it. But yeah, if you go back and visit New York City, it's going to be like a punch in the face.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get into our first topic, which is pipeline growth. We all need a little pipeline growth. Activity versus real impact in GTM. Can you set the stage and kick us off on this topic, Colleen?
Absolutely. So for me, this comes back to clarity. So what I see consistently is that teams confuse activity with impact. They're moving fast, but the motion doesn't create real progress. It's when you get clear on priorities and the sequence of work, pipeline begins to actually stabilize. So most teams are doing too much. There are too many tactics, too many experiments, too many A/B tests. It feels productive, but it's really just noise. The teams that outperform are the ones that focus on a few clear tactics and campaigns that are actually converting down the funnel. So what I've seen is a clean ICP and a unified message that outperforms a busy campaign calendar any day. When sales and marketing and product are aligned around the same narrative, pipeline becomes predictable. And when they're not, there's no amount of activity you can throw into the market to actually fix it.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
And as a marketer, I see all the time people don't have their strategy down. And, we offer LinkedIn live services. Like, we help businesses go live on LinkedIn. We repurpose it to podcast, short form video, and then we'll fill up their social media queue. So that's a tactic. But if they don't know their audience and their message, it's going to take some time, and we're going to have to help them with that, which then, that's more like CMO services. So then we're talking about other things, and so I think it's really important what you pointed out, because a lot of people forget about the strategy piece. So, like, I don't know, Dr. Croner, I'm curious, what's your take on all this?
No, I agree with Colleen. When you look at the way someone spends their time psychologically, if you have someone who's scattered, you're going to get scattered results. Mm-hmm. However, I know we're going to be talking about different gurus. One of the gurus that I might cite would be someone that I learned this lesson from, Darren Hardy, who talks about what is your one thing? What is the one thing that you do that most contributes to the bottom line of your company? And when you structure your activities around that one thing, you add that much more clarity and simplicity, and you can focus on that one thing rather than focusing on 100. Do what you do best, and structure the pipeline the same way, in a simplistic way. The more you're structured, the more you're focused, the more you will get a result, as opposed to spreading yourself too thin. So absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah. And you actually brought up a really good point about behavior, because how I look at funnel health is through behavior. I think impact shows up in the right buyer and how they're moving down the funnel. So I actually care less about volume and more about our buyer progressing down the funnel and what they're doing. So if your ICP is converting, then it's working. But if not, then you need to step back and get more clear instead of introducing more activity in the market. Oh, Jessie, you're on mute.
100% is what I was saying, because otherwise you're just going to waste a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
And, we're just helping people with organic marketing. But if you don't understand, your strategy, and you go spend a bunch of money on ads, like, then you're really going to burn yourself. Or like hiring a sales team, or like other GTM type activities. I'm just talking about marketing, but you're talking full GTM.
Yeah.
So I can't. Yeah, at a big scale, this can be really sad. So I'm curious from the audience, do you all have your strategy down? And when we say strategy, Dr. Croner, Colleen, what comes to mind for you? Like, if we say you need to have your strategy down, to me, I think audience, message. What do you guys think?
100% right. Get your ICP, like, get that correct. A lot of people will throw a lot of different audiences out there to test. And that's really not the right approach. You got to find one that's going to convert for you.
Agreed. And if you look at a book like Good to Great by Jim Collins, focusing on what is your hedgehog, what is the one area that you can serve the best, what's the one group of people you can serve the best, better than anybody else, and become the best in that area. That becomes the thing that you're known for and that you can focus on. So I agree.
100%. Yeah. Niching is so important. I see that too with, people wanting to cast a really wide net. Like, I don't know who my audience is, so I'm going to target everyone.
Yep.
It's like, well, how does marketing talk to everyone?
Yeah. It sounds
If you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. But I could talk about this all day, but we've got 3 unteachable traits that define sales success that we need to hopefully learn, but I don't know how we learn them if they're unteachable. So Dr. Croner, can you kick us off on this one?
I can tell you what they are.
Yeah.
In terms of companies, again, when you talk about go-to-market, we talk about companies who need to develop a strategy to do that effectively, especially companies of any size, particularly when someone's first starting out. One of the first things you need to do after you start getting yourself too busy is hire a salesperson. So you want to bring somebody on board who's going to be effective at that. But I bet so many of your listeners have struggled with the same thing many of our clients struggle with when they first come to us. And that's they've interviewed candidate after candidate who looked great. They brought the person on board. 6 months down the road, the performance isn't there. Everything they promised in the interview doesn't show up. And they're left asking, wait a minute, what happened to that person who we interviewed? Where did they go? They might think of that interview in some ways as the best sale that they ever really see out of that person. And now, as a young company, for example, all their hopes and dreams were tied up in that individual. Well, now what? And so that's no laughing matter. And that happens company after company after company. And that's the challenge that we set out to solve. Got started, as I mentioned, over 20 years ago now, looking at everything, researching everything that had been published on this topic academically in terms of what is it that makes a successful salesperson over the last, 95, almost 100 years now, as well as at the same time looking at the work that I was doing at that executive assessment firm, doing behavioral interviews with sales candidates and then following up with their managers after that to find out who really does become successful. Mm-hmm. And again, looking at all that data together, we found that many of the characteristics, if you ask most people, what is it that's going to lead somebody to be successful in sales? If I asked you, Jessie, what would you say?
What's going to lead someone to be successful in sales? Drive. One word?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with clear priorities.
Ooh, yeah.
And clear goals.
Yep. Very, very important. And people all say other things too, like I want somebody who has great relationship skills or somebody who's very persuasive. And what we found is you have to make a distinction between those characteristics that are teachable and those that are not teachable. And you hit the nail right on the head. We found that, again, although persuasiveness is important, relationship skills are important, organization is important, above and beyond any of those by far were these three non-teachable characteristics that, again, continue to differentiate the highest performers, particularly those whom you might describe as a hunter salesperson who needs to go out, knock on a door. They need to get that door sometimes slammed in their face and then knock on the next door with that much more certainty and passion and conviction. And when you think about it psychologically, that's a very special person whom we're talking about. And all the liking people and gift of gab, if you will, in the world, or just being hungry for money is not going to solve the problem of that person dealing with those challenges, dealing with that rejection, dealing with having to pick themselves up again and again. So we found it's these three non-teachable characteristics that consistently led to success in that type of a role. The first one is what we call the need for achievement. And psychologists define the need for achievement as the person who pursues excellence for its own sake, who's constantly focused on setting the bar high, if you will, jumping over that, then setting it higher again the next time, always going above and beyond. Think of the kid in school who has to get an A. It's that mentality, if you will, rather than somebody who's just hungry for money. It's someone who's hungry for excellence. The second piece is competitiveness. And the competitive salesperson we find really wants to do two things. Number one, they want to be the best on their team. They're always kind of comparing their performance to their peers because psychologically, they just need to know how they stack up, if you will, relative to the group. And then number two, they want to win that prospect or that client over to their point of view. Because to them, psychologically, that sale is kind of like a contest of wills. And then the third piece, of course, is optimism. And that's the salesperson's sense of certainty that they will succeed, as well as their resilience to remain persistent when they face the inevitable difficulty and challenge and rejection that a salesperson simply has to deal with. So we find it's those three characteristics all together, Jessie: need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism that psychologically create sort of the perfect storm, if you will. And collectively, we refer to those three characteristics as drive. You're exactly right.
Oh, I got it right. Yes.
Yep.
I love that. Okay. Well, I like that. Hunger for excellence. That one's important, I feel like, because like if you're going to go out and you're going to do that and you're going to have the door slammed in your face, I like how you said, and after you have the door slammed in your face, you're going to be even more passionate knocking on that next door.
Yep.
You got to have a little hunger there. Hunger for excellence, hunger for something. What you said, it's not going to be the money. So It's going to be like the self-pride a little bit.
Yep. So if you've seen The Last Dance, Netflix special about Michael Jordan, where he was out there every single morning practicing, that's the mentality that we're talking about. It's one of those things where oftentimes companies will say, well, I want somebody who was great in sports. That person is surely going to be a great salesperson. Well, you might capture some competitiveness, maybe, but I want to see what really made them great. Was it the fact that they just had some raw athletic ability? Okay, that's fine. Or did that person need their coach to wake them up in the morning? Or was it the sort of individual who was out there before everybody else, like in The Last Dance, practicing and practicing because they just needed to pursue excellence for its own sake? That's what we look for.
I love that. So cool. What would you add to all that, Colleen?
No, I think it sounds right. I totally agree. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think the three combinations together make sense too. I'm not sure if I've necessarily thought of all three combined, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
And then that's a question that you had too about being, can you teach that to someone? Well, past the age of 21, 22, not much we can really do, as you can imagine, to substantially change the person's overall level of drive. By that point, it's kind of either it's there or it's not. However, with kids, people often ask me if after I'll give a talk, what about my kids? What really leads somebody to having high drive? And there's all kinds of things you can do to raise a kid who has those types of characteristics without driving them crazy, of course, or without, again, making them the type of individual that's just over or imbalanced. So there are all kinds of healthy things that you can do. It's kind of that combination of nature and nurture. There's a way the person's wired at birth. They've got this characteristic called achievement striving, if you will, an element of what psychologists call conscientiousness, one of the big 5 elements of personality. And then you take that seed, if you will, and then you develop that over time by just basically holding the child accountable one way or another for their behavior. There's all kinds of things you can do. It could be with academic performance, could be performance in sports or in a band, or watching their brothers and sisters, or games you can play with them to kind of teach them accountability, teach them achievement striving. There's all sorts of things you can do as someone grows up, again, to develop that drive in a healthy way. That's the important thing.
In a healthy way. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I'd love to hear from the audience too. I see there's one person on YouTube, but for some reason, LinkedIn isn't working for me. Is anyone else having that problem? I see Layla, you're commenting on LinkedIn. Erica, I saw you were there. Erica's saying this is very interesting. Yes, I do like the psychology part of this. This is very interesting. I wish that stuff was teachable, but yeah, it's just not. How do you screen? Are we getting into that? That's a topic. Screening for those skills. So we'll hold off because I was just going to ask, how do I screen them? Okay. Well, before we get to this next topic, structured leadership, why clarity beats urgency, we just have a brief message from our sponsors, and we'll be right back after these messages.
This is Mike, also known as Clean with Mike on Twitter. Mike hired a virtual assistant from Cherry Assistant about 2 years ago. Now he has a $50K per month business fully managed by a remote operator in South Africa. His VA from South Africa does the following: closing inbound leads on the phone, Yelp and Google and Facebook, manages his CRM and Go High Level, deals with rescheduling, cancellations, any issues, hires and manages the cleaners, and sends them daily reports and updates. Mike has a fully cash flowing business managed by a remote operator for only $8 an hour. You can also hire a US equivalent worker in the Philippines, South Africa, Latin America for a fraction of the cost with Cherry Assistant. Be like Mike and grow your business with offshore staff.
If you're watching or listening on podcast, right now we're showing a menu of services, including but not limited to lead generation, CRM management, prospecting assistance, sales presentation preparation, data entry and cleanup, customer support, and project management assistance. They do so much more. So just scan that QR code or go to cherryassistant.com, talk to DJ Kim and his team, and they will place you with a VA that does the stuff that you're looking for. And we all need to delegate more. And, I promise you will be a better leader when you just let go and let other people do it. But let's get into structured leadership. Why clarity beats urgency culture. So, Colleen, could you kick us off on this topic?
Yeah, so I see this a lot with different companies. And what I will say is the moment that urgency takes over, the work begins to break down. So you get fire drills, you get priority shifting and constant thrash. People will actually stay busy, but the work doesn't compound and it's motion. It's not really progress. So for me, this comes back to being clear and developing clarity amongst teams. Teams are moving faster when the basics are clear for them. So be clear on the role, be clear on the actual goal and the order of operations. So clarity will remove the friction. And when people know what matters, the execution becomes clean and also repeatable. And there's ways of executing this in your environment. And what I believe is calm leadership isn't passive, it's disciplined. So it creates a predictable rhythm that stabilizes the team, which leads to better decisions. People do their best work when the environment is steady and not frantic.
Totally, 100%. I do agree with you, 100, and it's really hitting home right now. Maybe just because of all the live streams we have going on, and it's like all this urgency.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's showtime, whether we're ready or not. And so yeah, there is always a bit of urgency, and then when you grow a little, you hire people, and like you got to train. It's just like, I don't know, things get a little scattered, but then the urgency like continues to add extra pressure and stress. So like, really, we just need to get clear.
Yeah, we do.
What you're saying.
Urgency is always around us, inside the workplace, outside the workplace, right? But it's getting clear and communicating that and creating structure for your teams, because people, they like structure.
They do. Yeah, clarity really is key. Absolutely. What would you add to this, Dr. Croner?
That's such an important point. Leading by fire drill leads to burnout, leads to disengagement. No one wants to work in a place where it's constant fire drill. They might take one or two, but after a while, people are going to roll their eyes. Here we go again. And that leads to burnout, and it leads to people looking for elsewhere to work. Clarity is so important, especially making sure that the goals of the company are clear. The company's mission statement is clear. The company's top priorities are clear. How does that cascade then down to everyone else in the organization? What is each person's key 3 priorities as we go down the list? Making sure that everyone is focused on those. Then how do those roll up in regular meetings? And then making sure, you talk about delegation a moment ago. That's critical too. Because the more you can delegate, the more you can remain focused on those clear priorities. Take away everything that's not necessary and focus on your one thing.
That's right. You already told us in the beginning, we need to focus on that one thing that we're good at that leads to revenue. So delegating is important, but then the clarity, because we have to have that clarity to really know what we should be doing. And as leaders, because this is about structured leadership. Wait, what did Erica just say? Can I see her comment again? Wait. I need coaching for parenting my teen. Yes, absolutely. We need clarity for our teens, because if we don't have structured leadership with our teens, confusion is going to lead to chaos. So it's like, okay, child, how would you transition this topic into parenting, Colleen? Any ideas there?
I think this is life advice I'm giving, Jessie.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can apply it to high growth tech teams or just your everyday life, because really getting clear in everyday life is, that's really a win too. So I don't have teenagers myself, but I would think that you can still apply this strategy towards parenting a teen.
Totally. We just got to get clear with them.
Yeah.
And if we're confused about something, then chances are everyone else is confused about it. That's one thing I learned in leadership, is like, if there's something that I'm not asking, chances are no one else is asking it either. So I should just go ask. So
get clarity, seek it out.
Yeah.
And then communicate it. I think that's where a lot of the breakdown will happen. People either don't feel comfortable in their environment to ask for clarity. And then if they do, maybe they don't turn around and communicate it to their teams. But one thing that does constantly come up in different work environments is role clarity. I can tell you so many times I've stepped into different companies and people are unclear of their scope of work, or they're doing 2 people's jobs. And that right there is burnout in itself.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. I'm curious from the audience, does this hit home? Like, what do you all do to try to bring clarity to beat the urgency culture? So maybe that's just something we all need to start thinking of, is like, when we start to feel this sense of urgency, let's just get clear. Because I'll be honest, as a marketer, I'm trying to make you feel a sense of urgency every day. So all those ads you're seeing, all the we're being bombarded by stuff that's telling us things are urgent. And that's my job. I'm trying to tell you, like, this live stream is super urgent. You should absolutely be here. But so is every other advertiser and marketer. So like, if I'm not clear on what it is I'm doing, then I'll be distracted by who knows what advertiser is going to like show me what, and I'll be interested in it. But yeah, no, I digress there. I want to hand this back over to Colleen to kind of close us out on structured leadership and why clarity beats urgency.
Yeah, I mean, a closing line here, and really what I want everyone to take away is teams perform better when you replace urgency with clarity. It's really that simple. And getting clear on what it is your goal is and making sure it's being communicated. I'm going to keep it short and simple because I just think that that's the soundbite.
Amen, sister. Let's keep it short, simple, and clear. And let's move into topic 4. So this one, we're going to get into what I was going to ask you earlier, which was, how do I screen for skill? But this topic reads, screening for skill causes sales mishires. But how do I screen for those unteachable skills?
Very good question. And it goes back to clarity, being clear on exactly what you're looking for. One of the things that people often don't know when they interview candidates, sales candidates or anybody, people aren't typically trained in how to interview. So you sit down with somebody and you do your best. You think to yourself, okay, what does the person need in this role? In this example, sales. Well, I want somebody who's a good talker maybe, or someone who could sell me this pencil, or someone who's hungry for money. And so I'm going to sit in front of them and I'm going to see if I can use my gut to determine whether they're just going to have those things. Well, that's not the way to go about it. Of course, you want to get clarity in all things, and in clarity in hiring really comes down to figuring out exactly, number one, what's the job description? Number 2, what type of person are you looking for? What are the characteristics that lead to success in those outcomes that you're looking for? And delineating those. So we talked about the 3 elements of drive: need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. But then there are other core characteristics we can look for too, as I mentioned, things like persuasiveness, relationship skills, organizational skills. And then, of course, during the interview, the selection process, we use a series of tools and interview questions to go after each of those characteristics. Now, in the question, as you framed it, looking at the person's skills, how does hiring for skills sometimes cause an issue? Well, here's the challenge companies run into. They don't know what really leads somebody to success in sales. So again, they're doing their best. So what they'll do is they'll look at the person's past, they'll look at their resume, and they may say, wow, take like a young company, for example. They'll find this candidate who's had great experience at, say, a very large company. And they'll think, great, this person's had experience at this very large company. They must have been through some world-class sales training. So clearly they probably do have skills, and they probably do, by the way, some great sales skills, things like how do you close effectively? How do you cold call? They probably know all of that. So, I mean, logically, surely they'll bring that same degree of success to bear for us, this smaller company, right? Well, not necessarily, because the key distinction in that situation, for example, is what led to that person's success at that large company might really have been all the brand recognition and collateral material and support that they received that made those cold calls a lot warmer. Yes, they have a lot of those basic sales skills, but now when they move into a place where they don't have all of those supports, and they move into a place where maybe they're not necessarily, they don't have as large of a company around them. They don't have all those collateral materials, and they got to do a lot of that themselves. They got to be, for example, an evangelist. That's a completely different game now. Now what are they going to do? So that's where hiring for just skill alone, if we're talking about just ability to execute a task, might be okay in some situations in sales. But when you need somebody, for example, who's going to be a hunter, it's not going to be enough. That's where you're going to need to go after those non-teachable characteristics. And you say, well, how do we do that? It's a combination of assessment, which is using psychological instruments, psychometrics, and then following that up with a well-constructed behavioral interview. My company, SalesDrive, has an instrument called the DriveTest that goes after driving people. But then, of course, we have the interview thereafter, in this case with sales. That's where you sit down with a person and you keep in mind that the best predictor of future behavior is previous behavior. So in the interview, we want to ask the candidate about behavior they've engaged in at work that reflects these characteristics that we would like for them to show for us going forward. So when it comes to a characteristic, for example, a non-teachable characteristic like a need for achievement, tell me about the greatest goal that you've ever accomplished professionally. Really have the person describe that and flesh it out for you. And then you can reflect back to them. You've got to be proud of that. How do you intend to top it? Again, the person high in need for achievement has a plan to top it, and they are excited, most importantly, about the opportunity to tell you about it. They're not going to answer that question by saying, well, how am I going to top it? I guess I'm going to get this job. Again, that when they're answering questions in a simplistic way like that, they're helping you out because you're finding out that this is probably not the best match. for the role. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure, as you can imagine, Jesse, that the match is right on both sides, not only for the company, but also for the person. You don't want to put a person in a position where psychologically the demands that are being placed on them in terms of, again, as we talked about, knocking on that door, getting it slammed in their face, knocking on the next door, are psychologically difficult for them. You want to make sure that it's right on both sides and that they're ultimately enjoying what they're doing, because you don't want that person to end up in a situation where they're getting burnt out. So you want to find somebody who's naturally, psychologically predisposed to do well in that hunter sales type environment. Those are the things to look for.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want that hunter sales environment, yeah. So I don't know what to follow up with that. I mean, I guess it's just like, well, where do we find those people? And like, really, but like, I don't know, Colleen, what's your take on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point, which is following the behavior. And ironically, that's the same kind of tactic I use in go-to-market strategy. Follow the behavior of your ICP rather than the tactic, because the behavior is going to lead you to conversion. So ironically, I think we're saying the same thing, Chris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, when it comes down to clarity, when you have so many of things that you could look for in an interview, so many things that the company could have as its priority. I believe it was Michelangelo was, when he's carving the David, he's just removing everything that's not David, if you will. It's that mentality. And it was Steve Jobs who said, I'm as proud of what we don't do as of what we do. Yeah. And so it's focusing on removing all of that extraneous stuff and focusing on the one thing that you want to get done. That brings the clarity. What is your one thing? Then in the hiring process, what are the 3 non-teachables that you're looking for? What are the steps that you're going to use to find those characteristics? And then what are the more teachable characteristics that you can look at? And then when it comes to maybe more challenging types of positions that involve, say, solution selling, okay, things like problem solving and conceptual ability and analytical ability, going after all of those in the interview. And yes, there are things that you can do in terms of psychometrics, in terms of instruments, tests online that can go after these types of characteristics. So always happy to provide guidance on those too.
That's so good. This has been a really great episode. I mean, I feel really clear on everything.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I mean, I have to tell you, Dr. Croner, I ran a kind of a test. One of my advisors was like, because I was getting a ton of leads and I was not following up with them. And, we can do marketing automations all day, but like no one's calling the leads. So he's like, just go hire a commission-only seller. So we put out an announcement for commission-only sellers. We got a ton. So we did a group training. And I mean, there were like 70 people that applied. I think we ended up having like 30 in the first training. And then we ended up having 3 different trainings. But none of them worked out. I mean, one of them's still helping. It hasn't sold yet though. I still have hope for it. And I want to teach it, but like, what I feel like I maybe wasted a lot of those people's time. What could I have done to maybe make sure that like, I'm not wasting people's time? I mean, I guess it's getting clear in the job announcement, getting clear in the interview. But like, I don't know, I'm just trying to come up with a real life use case story for you to like, how do we screen them better?
Of course. No, you're exactly right. So backing all the way up, it comes down first off to that job listing. What do we do to write a high drive job listing that's going to attract an individual who's going to come on board, see the structure as commission only and knock it out of the park? Because yeah, you're right. It's one of the questions we'll often get is, should we cap a salesperson's commission? And I'll say no. When you're looking for somebody who's high drive, and again, it's not that they're motivated by money, but rather they're motivated by putting as many points as they can on the scoreboard, like a great athlete. It's how they show how well they've done rather than their goal in and of itself. So as long as the person has some financial stability, giving that opportunity to earn unlimited commissions, they absolutely love that. So then back to the job listing. What do we do to write a high drive job listing? Well, it's all about attracting that high drive person. So you advertise your position in that way. I'm author of Never Hire a Bad Salesperson Again, and we talk about that in the book. So starting out, for example, with a question, are you a top performing CRM company asks, are you a Top Gun salesperson? Here are the sorts of things that we're looking for in this role. We thrive on competition. We enjoy pushing each other. to levels that we haven't achieved yet. That type of a mentality. When you reflect that in the job listing, you start attracting individuals that have those types of characteristics. And then it comes down to, depending on the amount of time you have, it comes down to how can you use, for example, a resource like LinkedIn to find people that might be effective in that role. Look for people who are doing that role effectively now and reach out to them proactively. Oftentimes, as you can imagine, some of the best salespeople out there aren't necessarily actively looking right now. Oftentimes, they're currently employed and they're pretty happy where they are. And in many cases, as you can imagine, the more specialized you get, like somebody who's, say, both a great engineer and a great salesperson, they're very jealously guarded by the companies for whom they work. So if you can find using a resource like, for example, LinkedIn Recruiter, where you can look at your geographic specifications, you can look at the types of individuals' backgrounds, and I'm happy to share what to look for in a LinkedIn profile. You can then reach out to those people proactively, attract them, bring them on board, attract them to your job listing, and then kind of move forward from there with all the steps of your hiring funnel, the interviews, any assessments you would need, and things like that. Again, to make sure, as you mentioned, that the match is right on both sides and the person is primed then to knock it out of the park. If you want somebody who's going to start performing quickly, look for someone with relevant previous experience who's done that before. For example, if you're a young company and you need someone who's going to be an evangelist for your product, find somebody who's done that successfully before, who's worked at a smaller company and has had success in that role, and reach out to that person rather than, again, as I mentioned before, somebody who's done well at a larger company. Yeah, they may have done fantastic in that role, but now when they're thrown into a completely different situation, it might not be the same thing. So if you want somebody who's going to start performing for you quickly and start filling that pipeline quickly, look for someone who has done that before, and again, attract them to your position with what you can give them that their current position or previous position cannot give them.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I really like that. We did make the job postings on LinkedIn, but I don't think we used the thing you were talking about, the LinkedIn geographical thing.
LinkedIn Recruiter, yes.
LinkedIn Recruiter. Yeah. LinkedIn will let you do like one free job posting at a time. So that's all we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I also think it's interesting that you said, go hunt for them. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a hunter. I'm a marketer. I'm trying to get everyone inbound. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, yeah, exactly. So the ones that are doing the best, they're not necessarily looking for commission only jobs that are being posted on LinkedIn. They're out there selling commission, or they don't need to. But so the goal then would be to just excite them about the idea of it. So having that evangelist would be
There's
important.
that, or being clear on the fact that you need to train them effectively. So you might need to bring people on board with less experience. You can go to job fairs and things of that nature, but just keep in mind, get clear on the fact that you're going to need to train them. You're going to need to give them all the training they're going to need. And then so how do we find people who are going to take that training well? Well, that's when you begin to screen for those types of characteristics. You begin to screen for things like need for achievement, the person who wants to do well for the sake of doing well, who's like a student, who's like a sponge, who will take that information and run with it. Maybe someone who's earlier in career who wants to build experience. And then, of course, competitiveness and optimism as well, because those things are certainly helpful when you're in a commission-only situation and you've got to kill every single day, if you will. You got to hunt, and you've got you've got that step by step that you need to follow, repeatedly in a clear fashion, and again, consistently deliver, consistently close. That type of individual, they're out there, they exist. You can get them when they're early in career. Just be clear, as I mentioned, on the fact that you do need to train them.
Yeah, and not just train them on your product, but you have to train them on how to sell.
Yep.
All the things.
Yep. So there's that trade-off.
Yeah, absolutely. Colleen, what's your experience with working with sales teams? I feel like, looking at your background, you'd led some sales teams. Am I correct?
I've always been very aligned with a sales team, but Chris, you brought up a really good point about looking at people's backgrounds. And I do that too with marketing. If someone's been at a high growth company, I'm like, great, they understand the environment they're getting into. But I would love your opinion on hiring somebody that is maybe worked at a bigger company, because they could grow your team into the next level, right? And I've seen that work effectively. So what do you think about something like that? Like, is that something that fits into your framework?
Well, certainly, and they certainly can. I would look at, have they done that before in some way? So where were they in the stage of that high growth company in the past? If they've done that effectively, absolutely. They'll likely be able to do it again. The past is prologue, if you will. The best predictor of future behavior is previous behavior. So if they've done that before successfully, that is your person, if you will, for that type of a role. Absolutely. And then if they have that high drive, if they've got that drive mentality that companies are often looking for, even on the sales management side, when they're in that growth mode, if you will, that's just the best of all worlds.
Yeah. So it goes back to behavior. I love it.
Behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a good one. Yes, I love this. This is a really great conversation, and I guess that's our last topic. But if the audience has any more questions, comments, ideas, thoughts, share them. We'll share them on the screen here. But in the meantime, let's get into the guru of the week. Ooh. So we're gonna pull me out of the screen, and we want to know why we should go follow these people.
I can go first. So my guru of the week is Andrew Gari. I met Andrew. He was a guest on one of my episodes on my podcast, Build Without Chaos. So Andrew, I found, brought a very grounded strategic approach to marketing leadership that cuts through the noise. So he's someone I constantly look to for clarity and long range perspective. He's also a CMO coach. He has worked as a global CMO at very, very high level companies. And so he's seen a lot and he brings a lot of perspective. I'll pass it to you, Chris.
Thank you, Colleen. My guru of the week is Richard Abraham. I met Richard Abraham, back in, I want to say 2003, 2004. He is the author of a book called Mr. Schmooze, The Art and Science of Selling Through Relationships. Mr. Abraham has been CEO of several commercial real estate companies, and he did his master's thesis on what is it that leads somebody to be successful in sales many, many years ago. And his topic was all about relationships. And so that's what this book, Mr. Schmooze, is all about. It's a bestseller on Amazon. It's an apocryphal tale about this apprentice salesperson, if you will, who's following this very experienced salesperson around and notices a trend, notices the fact that this very successful salesperson knows how to connect with their customers and clients based upon what it is psychologically that's most important to that person. It could be a member of their family that is in, say, a band. It could be something that they're doing with their wife. It could be something to do with their husband. It could be something they're doing with their kids. Whatever it happens to be that's most important to that person psychologically. Use that in many ways to grow and blossom that relationship. Find out, or career goals. Find out what's most important to that person and make that the crux of the relationship. Because the more you can serve that person personally, the more everything else just flows naturally. And that's a skill. That's something that you can teach someone who has high drive. You can show them how to build relationship skills. So Richard Abraham, he's author of Mr. Schmooze, The Art and Science of Selling Through Relationships. I'd encourage people to follow him. He's also co-author of a book called Never Hire a Bad Salesperson Again with myself. And I would encourage you to follow him. He has great wisdom on LinkedIn. And it's been a very impactful experience for me to work with him. It taught me a lot about how do you connect with people on the personal side, on the relationship side, and then how do you combine that with the individual who's kind of high drive underneath that and use that to kind of build the perfect salesperson, if you will.
That's so cool. Well, I might have to have Richard on the show because I'm curious what he thinks about the challenger seller. Because in that book they say the relationship builder isn't the top seller, it's the challenger seller. So I'm always curious because I always come from the relationship perspective too. So I remember reading Challenger Seller and being a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, it all depends. It's a good point. It all depends how you kind of define it. I know that Neil Ragman, the author of The Challenger Seller, I believe that's the title of the book. He actually attended a presentation that I gave for Selling Power magazine. Got along great. I think it's really just a matter of how do we describe the person who uses relationships effectively. Oftentimes there's the stereotype of the person who's kind of the backslapper or the person who, isn't necessarily as serious. Or in reality, what you want to find is someone who is strategic about it, who thinks about it, who thinks about, okay, I was just with this person. They mentioned to me that, for example, boxing is a favorite activity of theirs, or they mentioned they enjoy snowboarding, whatever it is. Then within, say, half an hour before you get back from lunch, if you will, with that person, they get back to their offices and they have a coffee table book about snowboarding on their desk. So, it's a very strategic type of an approach as opposed to just random. So there are very specific things that you can do from a sales standpoint that you can use to build that relationship. It's not necessarily just connecting with people in a lighthearted way. It's really more about what's really important to this person. How can we make that? How can I use that to communicate the fact that I am there to be of service to them in every way that I can?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And that's the guru of the week. So now we want to make sure we know a little bit more about you before we wrap up here. So could both of you tell us a little bit more about yourself? We want to know who you serve, how you serve them, and if they could be served by you, how do they reach you? So Colleen, could you kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. So I actually have an advisory where I serve leaders who are trying to build real growth without burning themselves out or their teams. So most of them sit inside B2B SaaS and cybersecurity, and they're looking for clarity, alignment, and a healthy way to scale and grow. So if you're looking for that and you feel like that's alignment for your company, you can reach me on LinkedIn or also the buildwithoutchaos.com website.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm assuming you were done. Was there anything else you were going to add, Colleen?
No, that's it.
No? Okay. So Dr. Croner, how about you? Could you tell us a little bit more about you, who you serve, how you serve them, and if they could be served by you, how do they reach you?
Of course, I serve companies who are looking to grow their revenues. Simple as that. So when they want to increase revenue, we encourage them to think about their sales teams, and we help them to identify salespeople with the 3 non-teachable characteristics essential for success in new account acquisition. Those are the people I serve. It can be a company of any size, company hiring their very first salesperson, all the way up to a company hiring hundreds and hundreds of salespeople every year. We're very, very flexible, if you will. And then also companies who are looking to hire individuals who are high in drive in general. So those sales cultures, if you will, companies that are looking for those services, it's my pleasure to do anything that I can to help them. That is what I do. That is what gives me meaning and joy. And you can find me at SalesDrive.info. If you're hiring salespeople, for example, right now, there's a big link at SalesDrive.info. You can request, and please do, a complimentary assessment for any current salesperson you have or any sales candidate. We're happy to conduct that for you. And I'm happy to do a debrief call with you personally to walk you through those results, give you my interpretation of how they performed, and answer any questions you may have. No charge. SalesDrive.info.
What was that last part?
SalesDrive.info. That's the address.
SalesDrive.info. That's where they can make a meeting with you at no charge for one.
Correct.
Okay.
They can get a complimentary assessment. Correct.
Complimentary assessment, everyone. Say it one more time.
SalesDrive.info.
SalesDrive.info. Awesome. And I saw we got a comment. She's saying, "Oh wow, how gracious! What a huge heart." And then Colleen, yes, let's chat about the advisory. So this was a really great episode. You know, people really liked what you had to say. I loved the message of clarity and of really thinking about psychology, not just for sales teams, but man, we got into parenting and everything else. So thank you both so much for coming on. Next week, we have another really great episode planned. We're going to be bringing on here. Sorry, I don't want to cover you up. I'm going to cover myself up instead. But yeah, that's better. We've got Amira Barger. I hope I'm saying that right. And Catherine Tuominen. Hopefully I'm saying that right as well. She's the founder of Catalyst Brand Strategy and the executive vice president of Edelman. That's going to be a great one. So tune in, same time, same place next week, right here on Revening's company page. But again, thank you so much for coming on this show. It was a really great episode, Colleen and Dr. Croner. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jessie.
Thanks, Jessie. It was a pleasure to meet you, Colleen.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I'll see you backstage and we'll close out with an outro video. Thanks everyone for watching.